Welcome to Module 6. We are now in the second half of the semester, and things are going to seem like they're coming fast and furious because we have holidays coming up, and it always seems to get in the way of work. So please take a moment to assess your schedule and make sure you give yourself enough time to complete the assignments. So on to Chapter 8 on deviance. So basically deviance, as you read the chapter, you'll find out, from a sociological perspective, is violating a norm. It's not deviance in the sense that we think of as you're a child molester or you're an evil person. It can be that, but deviance at the end of the day is simply deviating from a social norm. So for this unit, a couple of things we want to be cognizant of. One, it's a social construct, and because of that, there's a whole chapter on linking power and deviance. So what we see is the law isn't always neutral. So what might seem as a good idea to have a law against something, it has consequences for people who might be poor or of a particular race or ethnic group. So that's something to keep in mind as you go forward. The two concepts that one of the assignments deal with are criminalization and medicalization. So criminalization is when we take deviance and make it a crime. So picking your nose and eating your boogers is gross and disgusting, but it's not against the law. If it were, a bunch of kindergartners would be in jail. And we don't necessarily want to have that happen. But there are some forms of deviance that may not even be evil or wrong, but it's certainly against the law, like sitting downtown on the sidewalk is against the law. Not because it's particularly evil, but because business owners made it against the law so people couldn't sit downtown and panhandle or beg for money. So from a conflict perspective, we would say that we would look at the fact that homeless people aren't invited to those meetings where those decisions were made, and it was primarily in the interests of business owners. Now, we're not debating whether it's a good law or a bad law. We're just trying to point out that because it's a constructed norm, that then we decide to punish those who deviate from it. There is perhaps inequality built into that system. Criminalization, like I said, taking deviance, making it against the law. Medicalization is when we take deviance and make it a sickness. So it used to be that if you had a baby and you felt murderous rage towards the baby, we would think you're a terrible person, perhaps even evil or possessed, and we would take your baby away from you. Now, we've studied biology and science, and we find out that some women may be suffering from postpartum depression. Now, it's not to say that we're making this up, but we see that if we treat someone under deviance as illness, we might actually help them get better. Because if you remember the sick role in Chapter 4, the sick role said that when you're sick, society has to give you some time to get better, but you also have an obligation to get better. The idea is that people are going to get sick, and if we were to just punish everyone for being sick, that wouldn't be very functional, because it's going to happen. But if you're sick and we give you some free time to get better, to rest, then, and you have an obligation to try to get better, not to go downtown to 6th Street and party, then society can get functioning again. It's the same with medicalization. So one of the things the book points out is that there used to be, in my generation, kids who would fidget in class, and they would get in trouble for fidgeting. As I got out of high school, those kids were considered to have ADHD, attention deficit disorder, or hyperactivity disorder. Now, I'm not saying it's right, it's wrong, it doesn't exist, it exists. But what we found was that we would medicate children because they were ill, and the idea was that the institution could function. Now, I've personally had students who, during the semester, have had to take ADHD medicine, and you can see that there was a clear difference in their ability to participate, to be productive, and to be successful. So that is not in any way to dismiss ADHD as a real thing or not. However, one of the things we see with medicalization, a downside to it, as much as there's an upside to it, is that we tend to medicate people not when they need it, but when we need it as an institution. So those same students who have ADHD, if there were only 3 students in a classroom, a professor or a teacher could take time to interact with them and find different things for them to do to keep them interested so that they wouldn't have to learn in a very rigid fashion. But because we have 30, 35 students in a classroom, the student then needs to be medicated. So a few things I want you to consider as you look at the video on the criminal justice system in Ohio State. Laws are not neutral. It's not meant necessarily consciously to punish anyone in an unequal manner, but they're not neutral. From a sociological perspective, deviance is constructed. What's considered legal or illegal, also constructed. Not all deviant acts have to be made against the law. So these are just some of the few things I want you to consider as you go into your assignments. And again, email me if you have any questions, and good luck this semester. All right.